Well, we're talking to Lord Mayor Clover Moore from Sydney. And when we were talking yesterday, you talked about a very ambitious bicycle program that you've been putting in place. I'd love to hear a bit about what you're aspiring for in your city and the bicycle world and why it's important.
Well, currently in Sydney, we have a ratio of 1% cycling. And we've committed to a project to build 200 kilometres of cycleways. Sydney is a difficult city in terms of cycleways. It's not like Copenhagen with wide streets where it's easily implemented. It's much harder, but we're determined to do it. Sydney's hilly, it's got narrow streets, it's the global city, it's crowded, congested, but we've committed to putting in 200 kilometres of cycleway. 55 kilometres will be separated. The rest will go through minor streets where it's easy to cycle, or where we can't help it on shared routes. But we're also embarking on quite a strategic behaviour change campaign so that pedestrians get used to cyclists and cyclists are respectful for pedestrians. So it's our biggest project. We've committed $76 million to this over 3 years. And when you come to Sydney in 3 years' time, we'll be able to go cycling together.
Of all the priorities you could have picked, explain to me why this goes to the top and why it's important to kind of change the behavior in the city.
Well, in our state, the state government simply hasn't spent enough on infrastructure and public transport in recent years, and that's very frustrating. I'm actually in the state parliament and I've been lobbying about that. We really urgently need light rail in the city. The city doesn't collect rates to do that. The state collects taxes and should be providing public transport. But what we can do at the city is in fact provide an alternative, sustainable form of transport, and that's cycling. Currently in our city, at least 50% of people walk to work, which is good. And just since we have talked about this plan, we've done all the planning work now for the cycleway, and just in that time, the ownership of bikes has dramatically increased. There's a real hunger in Sydney to do this and a real enthusiasm for it, but it's not safe yet. It's not safe to put in those dedicated routes, which we're now constructing, and we will see an amazing amount of construction happen in Sydney over the next couple of years.
One of the things I've seen as a theme here is many mayors aspire for the bicycle in their community, and then it really is kind of a persuasion. You want to push more enough to bring the change about, but not so much that people start screaming that their parking spots went away overnight. What's the process of changing the behavior of a city like?
Well, some parking spaces will go. We try and avoid it, and we try and provide alternative parking places. But at the end of the day, some will go. And some people aren't happy about that, and I have to politically live with that because I really have to provide this alternative form of transport. So we try and accommodate people as much as we can. The other thing we're doing is, in those areas where we're constructing the cycleways, we're also putting in car share. Car share in Sydney is something where you don't have car ownership. You use your bike or walk or use public transport during the week, and you can belong to a car share organisation and use that car for going and getting your bulky goods or going to away for the weekend. So we're hoping that we're going to bring a real change in behaviour, that the people living in Sydney won't feel obliged to own a car, that they'll be very happy to cycle, and then they'll be very happy to use car share. Now, Australians are a little bit like Americans in terms of the love affair with the car, so I'm talking big behaviour change, but I'm taking people on the journey. I talk about it at every meeting. I talk about global warming at every meeting. When people just talk about their car parking, I put it in a bigger context. And I think I have strong support from the majority on this. In fact, the people who are going to lose their car parking places ran a really nasty campaign during my last election, right up till 8 p.m. the night before the election. It had no effect at all. I got an increased majority. So I think the majority are with me, but it doesn't mean it won't be hard. Whenever we ask people to change what they do, it's hard, but that's what we all have to do with in addressing global warming.
I mean, it's a real act of leadership to kind of push people to this. One final question. You saw yesterday, we showed this Copenhagen Wheel, which essentially flattens cities and it gives people an extended boost and stuff. When you saw that, give me your sense for how that could fit into your plans, or how something like that becomes a tool to persuade folks and make the bicycling thing even more of the infrastructure.
When I saw that, I thought, wow, how elegant. And then I thought, wow, how fantastic for Sydney, because we're hilly. And it will just make it a bit easier for people. I know the road warriors who are really fit think take the hill in their lycra as a great challenge and they're happy, but other more ordinary souls like me who just like to cycle to work in your work clothes will really appreciate that wheel. So I really want to launch that in Sydney, and so if you can accelerate your production, I would like us to be able to have that available when we're rolling out our network.
Well, Lord Mayor, thank you so
challenge.
much. It's a great challenge, and we're going to take it to heart and share this video with people and use this for acceleration purposes. Thanks so much, and take care.
Thank you.
Lord Mayor Moore talking to us about the strategic role of the bicycle in Sydney.